All right, hello everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of Yet Another Movie Podcast, the movie podcast where we talk about anything and everything relating to movies or anything offshooting that, or, I always do this intro, so you guys know. I am Shane Wallach, and I'm with...
Sean Higgins.
Yes, so, first of all, apologies for all the little short episodes we're uploading so much in a row. We're going to get on track here in just like a week or so. Give us one more week, we're going to get on track. Don't worry, we're trying to catch up. To help us catch up, we're going to quickly do sort of a quick episode. It's possible. Here's why this one's going to be quick. Well, first of all, you read the title. We're doing the Sicario films. But here's what I'm thinking. If we don't talk about Sicario very long today, when Denis Villeneuve comes out with Dune, we can very, very, very easily do a filmography of his and re-examine Sicario. Because we're going to want to give a lot of time today to the new one because it just came out, and we're going to want to talk about that and how it relates to the original and all that. And yeah, of course we're going to talk about the original. But again, if I really like the original Sicario, spoiler alert, so there's definitely merit in re-examining at a later point. So if people are disappointed by that, just letting you know, there's a possibility we're going to return to it. So with that out of the way, there's going to be another one of those 30-minute-esque episodes. We're not going to try and talk about too long. But we're doing both Sicario films. So, of course, let's start off with the reasonable start, the first one. So, a little background, not too much again, because we're trying to make this quick. A little background, the screenplay is written by Taylor Sheridan, who you may know from his other movies he's written, such as Hell or High Water. He also wrote and directed Wind River, a movie last year. And also wrote the sequel, Sicario 2. Yep. So he is very much a part of that franchise, and I can tell you from seeing Hell or High Water and Wind River, very stylistically similar movies. I can tell what he goes for, and to be honest, it's very close to what I like. So that's why.
Yeah, I'll second that. I really love that his style. I love the types of stories he loves to tell. So yeah, I guess I'm a Taylor Sheridan fan for sure.
Yeah, and I haven't seen Vile, his
his
horror
first film. Yeah,
I mean, eventually maybe we'll just talk about Taylor Sheridan too. That's the other thing. These filmmakers and writers. There's a great possibility of returning to them.
Mm-hmm. But who else is involved with the first one?
Yeah, so the movie was, of course, directed by Denis Villeneuve, who at the time was best known for his film Prisoners, which was kind of this little hit in its own right. It was a sort of dark thriller, and it seems like Denis Villeneuve. However, I haven't seen his French movies, which apparently are very similar in tone. In fact, one got Oscar recognition, which is pretty neat. So I definitely have to check those out. So I can't comment on those, but I can definitely tell you Denis' style is very similar. He likes those kind of dark, gritty movies, and that really fits in here with Sicario. And, of course, for the technical side, we got Roger Deakins in the cinematography. So, very accomplished cinematographer. If you don't know who he is, look him up. He's been working for over 25, 30 years now on extremely major blockbuster movies. So, you definitely have seen movies that he's worked on. In fact, we just watched, which Ron Howard was it?
Oh, God.
Beautiful Mind?
What did he do? I think that is it.
Was it A Beautiful Mind? Yeah.
I
know we just saw one.
I know.
I feel bad.
I'm pretty sure that's the right one.
Yeah. So yeah, he's been working for a while, and funny enough, he didn't get an Oscar until last year. He finally won one for a Denis Villeneuve movie, Blade Runner 2049, which absolutely deserved, by the way.
Oh yeah, the cinematography was one of the best things in that film.
And we will touch on Roger Deakins for sure. And then the other person of note, I say Johan Johansson did the score. He recently passed away last year, very tragically. He was very young, so it's really too bad because he was a very talented guy. He got a few nominations for his work, but he never won, and it's too bad because some of his work's really good. He did things like The Theory of Everything and, of course, Sicario, which we're talking about today, and Arrival, Denis Villeneuve's next movie after
which has a great score as well. All three of those scores are fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. So those are some of the people involved. Anyway, let's jump in. So first of all, there's an elephant in the room.
Okay.
I promised I wasn't going to be mean to you, Sean. So here's what happened.
You have an embarrassing story.
So I think we made a mistake because so let's preface this. This was years ago. Sean and I were much more casual film goers at that point. This is 2015. We had seen as many movies as we could in 2014. We were doing it again in 2015, and there was a time in the year where we were exhausting ourselves, basically going to 2 or 3 movies every week.
Yeah.
So, Sean, why don't you take it from here?
So, I will never be able to live this one down because for some reason, I was tired that day and I still agreed to go see this movie. And of course, I fell asleep during this movie. During this bleak, gritty, totally made for me and you, movie. And of course, my ass falls asleep. And I will never be able to live that one down. It is embarrassing.
No, okay, so there is a running joke. I need
there
to
is.
bring this up
All right,
because
fine.
I will tell you, Sean has never fallen asleep during a bad movie. Never.
I think that's true.
Either you're the unluckiest person on the planet or you have like narcolepsy or something, because I don't know what it is. Because every time we see, a movie, I'm
It's not
always
like it's every time we see a
always
good
no.
movie.
Every time I see a good movie with Sean, I always have to look over my shoulder and be like, is he awake?
Oh, it's not that common. That's
Is
a
he
little
awake?
over the top.
Okay, let's do a little list. I just want to do this for the
There's
sake.
like 6 movies.
Only 6. Okay, let's
Out
see.
of all the good movies
Off the top of my head, Unforgiven, Drive, Sicario, Foxcatcher, which you still haven't watched.
I did buy the Blu-ray.
That totally counts.
I do own it.
Annabelle Creation, and Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior.
Not Fury Road though.
No.
That didn't happen at least.
Is there anything else I'm missing? I swear I might be missing one. But
I think that's all.
you can see from those type of movies that they're not stinkers.
It's the weirdest thing, and it's just become a dumb joke. I don't know how to explain it other than those were just bad times. I mean, okay, a couple of them I can explain. We started Mad Max Fury Road Warrior and Drive really late. It was like 2 a.m. I swear to God when we started those movies. And even I at the time was like, I don't think that's a great idea, but we gotta fit. Mad Max 2 especially was like, we gotta fit this in because we're about to go see Fury Road. Fine, I'll watch it. I'll try to stay up. And of course I fell asleep.
The funny thing was though, like Unforgiven was in the middle of the day and you fell asleep.
I don't know what the hell that was. I think I just didn't get enough sleep the night before. I think that's all it was. Because it's never been like, I'm the one person who doesn't like these movies or something.
We might be going a little too long for this, especially with how short we want this to be.
This is not worth this long.
But to Sean's credit, he did go back and watch it again in theaters. So
I made sure I was not going to miss that like Foxcatcher.
Yes, fair enough to you. Okay. So anyway, with Sicario, I guess I'll start off and say I think it's an amazing movie. It's freaking incredible. The thrills, the suspense, the filmmaking, the acting, everything's just extremely top notch, very tight, very well controlled. It kind of reminds me of like a mixture between like Alfred Hitchcock style suspense and like traditional like westerns. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's serious, gritty, but also has this build of suspense and thrills that reminds me of something like North by Northwest, where it's just this accelerating plot. It really has a good sense of how to put somebody in suspense without like being dumb or over the top or, throwing too much action in, because I think that would actually have mitigated some of the suspense. Because I'll let you go, Sean, just in a second, but I want to preface this with this. Part of suspense is you're always approaching something, what you think might be coming. Oftentimes what happens is when the thing comes, it's unfulfilling. Because it's not where you were expecting.
Sure.
Sometimes the most thrilling part of a movie is not when that big thing is happening, but when you're leading up to it. Because that fear of the unknown and what could happen almost supersedes what actually happens.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. And a lot of movies know this really well. Silence of the Lambs is a great example. Oh, God. When it utilizes the night vision goggles scene, those type of scenes are all built on what is going to happen, right? The unpredictability of it all. Or like movies that deal with crazy characters, like Misery. What is she going to do? That is what's scary. That's what's driving the fear of the audience. And same thing with Sicario in several moments, because our protagonist is sort of a fish out of water type of character. They're along for the ride. They don't know what they're going to expect. And Kate Mercer is just inundated in this world that she just wants to fight the bad guys. She
Yeah.
wants to get the people who killed her people, right? But she doesn't know that this web of bureaucracy, this network of corruption exists where she doesn't really know what she's doing, you know, until late in the movie when she figures it out. And that journey is what's exciting because we are with her. We don't know what's going on. So we have a character to latch on to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And sorry, I'll pass it off to you. I just wanted to establish that because I think that's what this movie does so brilliantly in the vein of Hitchcock, you know.
Yeah. No, that's true. Like, Hitchcock was fond of saying it. It's not the, like, a bomb going off. It's the lead up to the bomb. We know
It's
that
the
bomb.
fuse.
Yeah, it's the
Winding
fuse
down, you
or
know?
The counter or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly right. And you're right. This movie does that really well. This movie is absolutely thrilling, and everything you said about the acting is superb. I mean,
Yeah, we'll get into the details
Yeah.
in a second.
but I honestly, I think I give it the same rating as you. I absolutely adore this film as well. I've seen it now a few times since the theaters, and yeah, it's a fantastic movie. I love the neo-western style of it with the thriller aspect as well. It kind of reminds me, at least in style, and I think also, did Roger Deakins do No Country for Old Men? Because this movie reminds me of that film a little bit.
I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
I
didn't think to look
I'm not
it
a
up.
Coen Brothers expert, so
Okay.
I have seen No Country for Old Men several times, but yeah, cinematographers sometimes they can.
No, yeah, I mean, I don't know either. I just thought for a second. I was
Well,
like,
look it up.
Kind of reminds me. I'm gonna. He did. Okay. So
Okay. Yeah,
that's
that makes
why
sense.
why I was thinking of No Country for Old Men watching this movie every time. It just reminds me of that Roger Deakins classic style that he brought it to Fargo and No Country for Old Men, now to this movie. And I absolutely love that style of cinematography. Just wide shots, very bleak looking landscapes, barren landscapes, and a sense of dread undertone or sense of just not knowing where the evil or the villain or whatever is coming from or what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You know? The most vague terms about that, but you know what I mean. Like, and he does that very well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. Yeah, I think that mixed with the top of the line, you know, really well made technicals and the engrossing story that this movie really pulls off a combined, you know, masterpiece with all those elements. So I want to jump into like the details. So first of all, we can talk about the performances because I think several of them are stand out. First of all, Emily Blunt, she's a very talented woman, and she definitely shows that off here. We need a character that's kind of relatable, that likable, that we want to be with, because at the same time, she's our latch into the story, right? She's the one who who's carrying us through this, and we're following her most of the movie. So she kind of just needs to be. She can't be too much of a distraction because it's not really about her.
Yeah.
But she needs to have a character that we can get on board with, and that also feels real. And there are several like little details to her that really help that. She's very. You can tell that she's not the type of person who, has a great social life, right?
Sure.
She is very obsessed with her work, and she is passionate about her work.
You definitely get the social life part when Daniel Kaluuya brings her to a bar, and she's just very awkward there.
Yeah.
He like makes fun of her, like, "When was the last time you went on a date?" And she's like, "Yeah, shut up."
Yeah, no, and that's good. You know, and that's the type of character I would want from her. You know, but. And then we'll talk about the supporting players because they are extremely important. First of all, Josh Brolin. I love Josh Brolin. Every time I see him more and more, you know, he's just such a talented guy. And I'm glad that he's getting a lot of work right now. Because every time I see him, he's usually the highlight of the movie. You know, like just with this year, with Avengers and Infinity War. He was like the highlight of the movie for me.
Yeah.
He did a tremendous job. And it was like a mocap performance. And, you know, him as Cable, you know, very memorable character because he was that character, you know, and he really embodied it. And he's super flexible as an actor, too, because I'm glad you brought up No Country for Old Men, which is one of my favorite Josh Brolin performances. He is our Kate Mercer in that story.
Yeah, that's true.
He is
right.
Yeah, so he is the guy who you're following for most of the movie, and here we kind of have him as more of the interesting government guy who has a lot of shady going on. We don't know what he's with.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like from square one, you don't really trust him, but you follow.
Oh yeah.
Basically, you're in Kate Mercer's shoes. Basically, the whole movie, like you mentioned, wherever sure trust goes, we go. Basically, and she's unsure of him too. Like, okay, who does she work? Who does he work for? You know, and even more so, it's Benicio del Toro. Which
we'll get to.
Yeah.
I just want to finish.
Oh, okay, sorry.
This because I like some of the characterization they use for Josh Brolin is really well done. You can tell he's kind of cavalier, casual guy. He wears sandals into a meeting. You know? There's something interesting about him, but at the same time, he seems very utilitarian, and they even double down on this in the sequel. You know, he is about just doing whatever needs to be done to get the mission done because he believes in it. He believes that, and that's what's so great about their characters is because they're not villains, right? They all have a goal, which a goal that you can understand and even sympathize with. But at the same time, their methods are questionable, right? And that's why this movie is such a genius movie to me. And I'll get into that later. But yeah, you said Benicio del Toro. I'll let you launch into that one too.
Oh my gosh. Benicio del Toro is riveting in this movie. He steals every scene he's in. He's also a character, even more so, you don't really trust because...
well, you don't know who he is.
Yeah, that's why you don't trust
Kate Mercer
him.
the whole time is like, who is that?
Who is he? Who does he work for? And we find out, of course, he works for whoever. He is the Sicario. He is an assassin. He will work for whoever.
Yeah.
Well, there's a reason they get near the end, and I guess we shouldn't get into that, even though the movie's a couple years old now. Just in case someone's listening to this who hasn't seen it.
Well, I think we are going to talk about spoilers for the first movie. It's just going to be impossible to avoid. But the second movie, we will be spoiler free.
Oh, yeah, of course. But essentially, I just find his character riveting.
Oh, just so you know, I should mention this on this podcast. So, the movies that we talk about that are spoiler free, our end of the year lists, we're going to make them spoiler filled this time. And the reason being is so we can talk about some of this stuff because
it's easier.
Yeah, it is. And we can be more detailed and nuanced. We only do this because these movies are new. But yeah, we'll get into this more later. But of course, the first movie, it's a few years old. I think we're fair.
No, yeah.
To talk about it.
Fair enough. But no, I just find his character absolutely like this riveting. He's an anti-hero, and I love anti-hero movies, so...
Well, yeah, and I'll talk about the moral complications too, because I think that's one of the great stuff. But he really pulls off a great performance. You know, he has that gruffness to him, that physical presence that just is demanding.
He's definitely someone you don't want to mess with, but he'll like protect you too at the same time. Like he protects her when one of these guys comes after her at a bar. Turns out one of the guys working for the drug cartel finds out who she is, and because she kind of makes herself obvious. I believe it's after the bank scene, right? That's why it's obvious. I might be wrong about that actually.
Wait, say the first part again.
Remember the scene when this guy picks her up at a bar or goes home with her?
Oh,
and then he turns out to be one.
You're talking about John Bernthal.
I should really remember names. Yeah, that was embarrassing.
Did you forget his name again?
Yes, I did. John Bernthal, an actor I apparently don't know very well, but I've seen a lot. He's one of those guys that I just don't have down in my brain yet. But yes, I know him from Baby Driver. It's one of the first ones to come to mind. But he's been
Count Fury.
Yes. Well, you've seen Fury way more than me. I've seen it once, to be fair.
I've only seen The Accountant once, and I remember him in that.
All right, fair. You also like that movie more than me. Well, I liked it. Yeah. Anyway,
we're getting off topic.
No, John Bernthal's character, like he'll still protect.
Because
her and stuff.
He was following her, and we get a little lead on that. Yeah.
No.
No, but the reason he's protecting her is not out of goodwill. He needs to use her.
No, that's true.
And that's why he's protecting her. That's I was just talking with a friend of mine about this. I'm like, no, it's not goodwill.
Okay.
Although, because in the very last scene, he says, "I'm going to shoot you unless you sign this."
No, you're right. I guess I was thinking of that. Plus, there's baggage from the second one, which we'll get into later, and how they treat his character there.
I'm not saying he's a complete asshole or anything like that.
No, sure.
I'm just saying he's very, very driven to accomplish his goal.
That's fair.
And he's not going to let anyone get in the way.
Okay, that's completely fair. I understand that.
Yeah. So, and then the other supporting roles all do a pretty good job. There aren't that many big players in this, but they all are believable. They
Mhm.
all accomplish what you need them to do. There's the son and father police officer who we kind of get the picture of the other side of the border through his character and that side of the coin, which some people have said is unnecessary. I kind of like it, especially considering the very ending of the movie. It's this nice sort of soft, subtle critique on, you know, the drug trade and the economic
Yeah.
impacts it has on in Mexico. It's
Mhm.
not just in the United States, and it's a very very convoluted issue. So there's a lot of facets, and it's nice that Taylor Sheridan tried to capture a lot of the
I
elements.
really love that ending scene where the kids are playing soccer and then they just stop when they hear the gunfire and then resume. It just drives home how normal this is to them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this horrible place. Like we imagine like this horrible place to live, and it would be a horror, because of all the violence that goes on. But to them, it's just this is everyday life, and it's so bleak. And that's one of the things I like about this movie is how freaking bleak it is.
Yeah. So moving on to the other details, we talked about Roger Deakins. I just want to mention him again because his visuals are absolutely breathtaking. Some of the visuals in this movie, and the sequences and just how they're shot and conceived are just absolutely amazing and really really thrilling. He knew how to capture these moments, and you almost have to just see the movie to know what I'm talking about. But um, the fact that Roger Deakins is able to, this is what one thing he really does is capture night really well, like just
Yeah.
beautifully. There's no artificial light in this film. When it's pitch black, you see the night vision that the
Mm.
soldiers are wearing. And that's super neat. It's like a nice callback to like Silence of the Lambs, and it really works well in the context of this movie because it creates that claustrophobia sense, which this
Sure.
movie can be really claustrophobic at times, which makes it more scary, and that's
Yeah.
exactly what you want.
It feels like what it would be like to actually be there. It helps the viewer kind of put themselves into the characters
Yeah,
even
have
better.
the barrier
Yep.
between the screen and the viewer break
Mm-hmm.
down. And I loved that, and just some of the overhead shots, just giving the landscape of the border and what it's like down there, and
Yeah.
Mexico versus the United States. All of that really works, and yeah, you're right. It's very evocative of No Country for Old Men because it's a similar type of landscape, so you get the same sort of visual
Sure.
impact.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, both are very well shot. So yeah, really have to commend him. And Denis Villeneuve's just vision for the whole movie. And I'm going to talk about a couple of scenes that stood out for me, and then
Sure.
I'll jump up. First of all, I think the most thrilling sequence in the entire movie is the Juarez prisoner transport sequence. It's the centerpiece of the movie. So a lot of movies do this. They'll have the big middle centerpiece sequence, the thrilling sequence, and then they'll have the finale. And but oftentimes in these movies, I think the centerpiece does often outshine the finale, even though the finale has more stakes generally and is more uh, plot relevance directly.
Mm-hmm.
This Juarez sequence is just absolutely intense and just literally on the edge of your seat when you're watching this. I remember in the theater, I could not. It's really really intense. And the funny thing is about it is even after you know what happens, it's still just as intense the next time, because even though I know how it's going to resolve, just that dread of the whole thing really still pays off. And that means it's good filmmaking, not just good writing. It doesn't matter that I know the plot, right? I'm still on the edge of my seat. I'm still feeling like I'm in danger. And
Mm-hmm.
and there's just some fantastic visuals because I don't even know how they shot this sequence. It's absolutely amazing to me that they shot it on a $30 million budget too. This sequence that looks better than anything Transformers ever put out. Because you have this caravan of SUVs, right, and they're being flanked by Mexican police who we don't even know if we can trust them.
Right.
And then they're driving through Juarez, and they have to like change their route around, and then you have Kate looking out the window, and you see dead bodies hanging from a bridge, and they're like,
Oh God.
made an example out of these
Mm-hmm.
people, and whether or not the real Juarez is like that is irrelevant
Yeah.
because it's intense. It's crazy scary to me.
In that scene, also you hear like gunshots, but and I believe it's Josh Brolin has the line, "Those aren't fireworks," or "Those aren't firecrackers," or something like that, and it's just again driving home that this is normal there, and this is the world you have now entered, and you're right. Like, it
Yeah,
just
and then
adds more to the
and when
tension.
the action does pay off, it's really intense. But not only that, it's realistic, and that's why I
Mm-hmm.
really have to give credit to Taylor Sheridan. His action scenes are not like action movies.
Right.
They are real. This is what you could imagine like a cop's cameraman capturing, if he
Yeah.
was driving along with them. Which I love. I think that action is so much better than the get behind cover, shoot him a bunch of times, get behind cover, shoot him a bunch of times, big explosion.
Never have to reload almost.
And yeah, exactly, those tropes which work in those over the top movies, but if I want a really serious gritty thriller, I want my
Yes.
action to be the same, right? I
Yeah,
don't want it over the
exactly.
top. And that's what this scene does. I mean, the gunfights, they're over in 5 seconds because that's how gunfights work. They're not like these over the top 20-minute long things. They last like 5 or 10 seconds, and that's how Taylor Sheridan does it. And that's great, It's so intense when it happens because you get the power of the gun. Because a lot of movies kind of tone down guns.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know that or you notice that a lot because the guns stop feeling like guns. Like, if you were to actually shoot a weapon, you're like, whoa, that feels nothing like, the Matrix, or something.
Yeah.
Where it's just completely stylized and it's lost, the utter power of it.
And a lot of those action movies, no one really reacts to recoil. If you also notice that.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you shoot, when anyone shoots, it recoils a little bit. So you have to either brace yourself or, you notice it a little bit. Like you want to at least move a little. Even if you're used to
it. Firing blanks would always helps, which they do in a lot of these movies.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that this movie does show it off well. I mean, it's not perfect. I mean, there are elements that are kind of cliched. I mean, this movie does feature silencers, which silence the guns, and that's not how silencers work. And it's okay. Just kind of give the movie a little bit of credit. You can't be like everything has to be absolutely perfect.
No, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a movie. It should, it's got to do certain things. It has to bend a little bit of reality, but as real as possible as you can get without like ruining the story is preferred. Yeah, in a movie like this, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think the important thing for that is, does it serve the story well? Is it a crutch, or is it used to serve the overall story? And I think here it is more of a service. It's not leaned on too much. You know what I mean? Because so much of the movie is so real. And now I do want to touch on Johan Johansson's score because, this is not the type of score you'd imagine from John Williams or something. It's not.
Definitely not.
You can't just sit there and hum this score. Most of it's just very like tonal and plays with sound and just droning is a good thing, but it's just playing with the deep frequencies and trying to build this sort of sense of dread slowly without you even noticing it, and it really pays off in some of those action scenes, that subtle score. And of course, the theme to Sicario is the Beast.
I love that
track, which
so much.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. I listen to it all the time because it's really intense and it builds up that dread really well. And I really have to give Johan Johansson credit. He's a different type of composer. He's not like your Thomas Newman or John Williams, but when he gets the right movie,
he doesn't want you to notice the score as much as Williams does.
Yeah, he's not trying to get you to go out and hum the theme to whatever when you're
hum
done.
The theme of Sicario. No.
Yeah, exactly. But what you do is it adds and builds the experience very much so, and that's what's important.
It adds this little like undertone of dread subliminally in your head as you watch the film, and that's what it does so well. Especially that Beast score. That track. I love that track.
Yeah, and I do want to talk more about Sicario. I mean, we've already been going so long. We're already at 30 minutes. Yeah, I feel like we should start wrapping it up. But
okay.
What I will say, and here's what I talked about the moral stuff. I really want to touch on that before we go.
Yes.
Because this movie doesn't have, direct villains and heroes. I mean, the cartel is kind of like the villain, and you understand why that they're being pursued. It's the mutual enemy, right, of all three of them.
Yes.
For very different reasons for all three of them, too, which is very interesting. Mm-hmm. They're kind of like friends by association, common enemy type thing.
Yeah, they're definitely not people that would hang out outside of work.
No.
Especially Emily Blunt and the other two, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that about them. And they all have different approaches. But what's interesting about it is even when someone's like Benicio del Toro's character does something horrifying, like he does in the very climax, where he finally confronts the killer of his family, and or the guy that ordered the killing, essentially.
Yeah.
And instead of just killing him, he kills his whole family first.
Yep.
Including his two children.
Mm-hmm.
What's so interesting about that, and sure, maybe other people don't agree with me, but I don't. I'm not like, oh, I hate Benicio del Toro now because he killed children. I mean, killing children is horrifying. They were innocent. They had nothing to do with it. But putting yourself in his shoes, it's like I see what he's doing,
Yes.
and I understand it. It's horrifying, but at the same weird time, it's just it puts you in this weird moral place where you don't know anymore, and that's so great when a movie can do that.
It is weird too. It is weird. You're right, because it's like, yeah, this guy is the reason your family's in. Why you had to. I don't know if they specified whether he was there at the time or not, but why he doesn't have his child anymore, and that comes back in the second one. So, but yeah, you're right. So it's like this moral dilemma. What would you do in that situation? I guess.
Yeah, I mean, his family was killed by this man, and because he was a prosecutor in Mexico, and he wanted to go off to the cartel, and they didn't like that, so he, used whatever means he could to eye for an eye, right?
Mm-hmm. It's a very human, in an animalistic, natural way. Basically, part of humanity is revenge, and whether it's right or not, we can debate
revenge
that,
films
totally,
are always like a little morally iffy.
Yeah.
But I think that this movie uses it really well. And all the characters are. Josh Brolin's the same way. Is he doing something wrong? Well, you could say, yeah, according to Kate Mercer, absolutely.
Yeah.
He's
going outside the law,
lied
to get
and
the
cheated
information
and gotten people killed.
Yeah.
I mean, you could say, I love Emily Blunt's reaction when the shooting happens on the bridge. It's like,
God.
what are we doing?
Yep.
Which is exactly like what you think. Like, what are they doing? This seems really like shady. What's going on? And it was in a way, but to Josh Brolin, it didn't matter. He wanted to get the big guy. He wanted to start dismantling the cartel from the inside, and that once the plan is unveiled, it really starts coming together. All the pieces fall into place, and then this is one of those movies where the person we've been rooting for kind of loses in the end.
Right.
They were used, and that's the only reason they were part of the plot. They were used, and then they get nothing out of it. She walks away with her life, but
that's about it.
But that's about it. She has nothing to fight back against it. She just kind of has to accept it. But it really would be interesting to see her come back in the third one if they do make it, because I want to see where her character goes after that.
I like how this movie plays with the idea of like the drug cartel and just organized crime in general is so big. It's not just one guy doing all of this or one guy commanding all this. You take that one guy out, you're good.
Yeah.
No, not at all. There's tons of guys that just once one dies, another will take his place. And no, I'm not quoting Captain America, even though that's absolutely what popped in my head right there. But in all realness, it's true. That's exactly what it is like, because part of it is these people groom younger people to be prodigies, basically, to take up the mantle once someone dies, one of the leaders dies. You see this in Mobsters. If you ever watch Goodfellas, that's a great film that shows that. So, yeah, this movie talks about the bleakness and just how it's like, they even say in the movie, do you feel like we're winning by obeying the laws of our government? Do you feel like, do you see that outside with the drugs? It's like, and Emily Blunt has went, well, no, I don't. It's true, yeah. And so it paints a very interesting moral dilemma, like you've been saying, and that's what's so fascinating about this movie for me.
Yeah, it's very complicated.
It goes beyond the visuals.
All right, so we should move on to Sicario 2 real quick, because we do want to talk about this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sicario 2. So I should mention, Taylor Sheridan was the only person to return. Everyone else has been replaced with new people. I didn't know basically anyone of the replacements, so I can't really talk about them too much. But yeah, Taylor Sheridan did return to write the script. So Sean, just in the sake of time, what did you think of Sicario 2?
It's good. It had it touched on different things about the cartel that the first one didn't that I liked, but I wish they went more after, and we can talk about those in a bit. But there were things that I liked. There were definitely problems, especially unfortunately in the screenplay, and that was disappointing considering basically up till now Taylor Sheridan it's been like freaking home runs out of the park, um, and it's like this one. It's like okay, he made it to second base, but he didn't make a home run. That's for sure. But I like this film overall. It's fits in the Sicario universe. It feels like the first one. It just doesn't quite have the technical level as the first one, but it's still really good, and I still recommend checking it out for sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't say really good. I think that's a little strong for me. I'm gonna disagree a little bit. I think the script problems do get in the way a lot of this movie. Yeah, it just doesn't feel like a good natural successor to Sicario. This movie is just cannot avoid being compared to the original. And then what's nice about it is some of the stuff is really well done. I thought the direction for the most part was pretty solid. Sure, it wasn't Denis Villeneuve, but he crafted a solid action movie. It looks good. The action is directed well. It was well shot too, so the new cinematographer did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
Sure, again, not Roger Deakins, but fine. Same with the composer. All of it was.
They all did like I would say watered down almost lesser versions of what the original was.
Yeah, I mean, but it all still worked, and it still looked good enough for me to say, yeah, this is all fine. These are not the problems.
Yeah.
The problems for me, I could have accepted all that if the script, was great.
It's so disappointing, isn't it?
But the script is the problem, and what actually hampers the enjoyment, because they bring in a lot of subplots, like Islamic terrorism comes in, and it just seems like a really weird thing to involve.
Yeah,
I'm just like, the drug trade is already such a focus these days. You don't really need to find another timely, quote unquote, topic.
Yeah.
But the one thing I did like is talking about the human trafficking that the drug trade is involved with. Oh, that's interesting because that's a topic that I could see naturally fitting in.
Sure.
Is being people
Absolutely.
are being trafficked
That
across
was
the
one
border.
Of the better parts
Because
of the movie.
the immigration thing is a hot button issue right now, and that is interesting to me. But yeah, again, this movie kind of, and then with the main plot, this movie has way too much stuff going on. I couldn't really figure out what exactly we were doing. First of all, the kidnapping plot of the daughter of the cartel head. I just never really understand what their idea or plot was with her. Which got in the way, and then we have this kid from America who gets involved in the drug trade, and that's supposed to show you I don't know, the effect that it has on the youth, but it just didn't quite work for me either because there was not enough time invested, and he didn't really feel like a character to me.
That was definitely one of the disappointing aspects of the film because forever in the film until it finally connects at the end, it's like, okay, where is this going? Because I like the idea of what you're trying to do. I think of what you're trying to do is talk about how it affects kids that are in these families or amongst these people that are doing this stuff and how it influences them. But the problem, and it was like, okay, I think I see where you're going with this. You want to talk about kids who are in this world, are either brought up by someone who's in the drug trade or are being influenced by their peers or whatever. But I wish they played with that more.
See, I disagree with you because I don't think that it's the fact that it's not involved in the story, because that's the same as Sicario, the kid and the dad, the police officer. That didn't come into play into the main plot until the end of the movie, too.
Sure.
But the reason why it works is because it's actually shorter. There's less time spent on it, which makes it less of a diversion and less like you're asking the whole time, what's the purpose of this?
That's true. That's the other thing, too.
I don't think that I personally don't agree that you're nailing the right thing. I think what the problem is, it was too long to just be that subtle critique and too short for me to care. If that makes sense.
No, you're right. That's the other problem with it, too. It's like, you didn't get the right medium, because the first one, like you said, yeah, absolutely, it does that right. I don't know, make the movie about that. That would have been fascinating. I would love to watch a movie where it plays with that, talks about.
I don't think that's Sicario 2, honestly.
No, it's not.
So I disagree with you on that.
Don't have it in there as such a major plot point then.
Yeah, but what I will say is, first of all, Josh Brolin and Benicio del Toro both give really good performances again,
Yeah.
so that's really important, and I really like their characters. The problem is, it just gets a little too forced at times. What they do and where they're going. Um, yeah, so I just, those kind of are weaker part. I think the best way you can watch this movie is just go into it not thinking about the original.
Yeah, it did hurt watching
And
the original like the night
just
before.
watching it as its own little thing, and you might actually enjoy it then as just a competently made action thriller, But the moment you start thinking about the original, you start thinking, well, I had a disagreement with my friend over this because he was like, I didn't see any potential for a Sicario sequel. And I'm like, no, 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 that's the problem. I saw tons of potential for a Sicario sequel. This didn't meet that potential. That's the problem I had. There was so much potential. You could have taken this to a new place. We were promised like kind of a drug war in this movie. You don't really get that.
Yeah.
Just so you know, just so people know, that's not in this movie. There's no drug war that we see. We see more of a drug war in the first movie, So this one is just, it didn't feel very focused. It's like he had 3 different ideas for the sequel and just kind of decided to do them all instead of just picking one and sticking to a very focused storyline like he has in all of his other movies. Because that's the interesting thing about all of his other movies. They're very focused films. There are very few subplots. And if there are a subplot, it's very integrated in the story. This movie has several subplots, and none of them feel that integrated in the story.
It'll cut away, and it just feels like a completely different movie for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the most frustrating parts about this movie.
Yeah, and
it's a shame because I really liked it.
And this movie tries to do something similar to like the Juarez scene when they're doing that convoy into Mexico.
Yeah.
And yeah, is it sometimes thrilling? Yeah, it is. But at the same time, it's not nearly as effective as the Juarez. We don't get the same sense of dread in that sequence that we did in that. And that's just the real shame, because that's what the first movie succeeded so well on, is making a movie that's just packed with dread and suspense.
No, the first one feels like it was just this perfect combination of masterful cinematographer, masterful director, masterful writer, all coming in, and a masterful composer. And this one, it's like all good people and someone who's usually a masterful writer just not doing their A material, basically. And yeah, it feels like one of those sequels. Like it's gonna be a comparison that might make sense to some. It's like Halloween 2 to Halloween. Like they couldn't get John Carpenter back, so they brought someone back in to try to emulate the look of Halloween, and they did a relatively good job. It's just there's something obviously missing, and I don't think it's just Denis Villeneuve or anything, or just Roger Deakins. I think it's a culmination of everything and a superb screenplay in this film. But that's just kind of what it reminded me of. Just one of those sequels that's good, but it's just you're comparing it to this really excellent film, and it's it hurts it when you think about it in that light. But it's fine. It's good on its own. You know?
I mean, yeah. Again, the best thing about this movie is if you get rid of the association to Sicario, it works a lot better.
Yeah.
And I think standing on its own, it's a competent movie. It's well made, and it's just held back by a lackluster script, which is surprising coming from Taylor Sheridan. It's really funny that all these people replaced all of the A players, and the only one that let me down was the same guy, which is kind of ironic. But hey, it happens sometimes. We don't know. I know. Again, my friend, and this is Brandon for you, Sean, and people who have seen him before on my videos, but he indicated that he thought that Taylor Sheridan didn't want to do it, and that's why it didn't work too well. I'm actually not convinced of that. I think he did want to do it. I think he was kind of overwhelmed with ideas and just not able to effectively make a sequel. I don't know if he really knew what a sequel called for. You know what I mean? Because it's tough to make a sequel. It's really hard to make a good sequel. Everyone in Hollywood should be aware of that by now, because it's really tough, for any movie, and especially Sicario, which is not your typical movie that gets a sequel.
No.
Again, I think there was potential. I think you could have done it, and that's why even if they announce Sicario 3, I'll be excited. I just hope that they learn their lessons from this movie. Taylor Sheridan looks at the feedback that he received and says, yeah, one thing I need to do is go back to my old formula, making something extremely focused, something that is just predicated on the dread and the mystery of what's going on, because that is what we missed in this film.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. Like, just, pick one or two ideas, make them work together. If you don't, try a second draft, work on it. Like, I know this guy can do it. He's proven it 3 times in a row, so I definitely don't doubt. I don't know what happened, but yeah, this is just a less polished script, and that's unfortunate.
I mean, yeah, I definitely not hating Taylor Sheridan for this.
Yeah.
It's just, it's a misstep, and it happened.
This is not Last Air. This is not like a god awful movie where you're just like, oh, Taylor Sheridan, your name has been tarnished.
Last
not
Airbender.
At all. Yeah, Last Airbender. That was the first one that come to mind. But
the 5th movie in a line.
Yeah, that's why I stopped. Book of Henry is a better one, where I really liked Jurassic World, and then you just watch that, and then Fallen Kingdom, and it's like, oh, yeah, you're not a great writer. Okay, good to know.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, it's not a fluke, that he wrote 3 good movies in a row. It's just, he's got to go back to his roots, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so overall, yeah. Well, first of all, Sicario, highly recommended if you haven't seen the original.
Yes.
Absolutely brilliant film. As for the sequel, if you're looking to just kill a couple hours, there are worse ways to do it. It's definitely going to entertain you enough, keep you interested. It's fine. It's a competent movie. Has some writing problems, but if you just focus on the more simple aspects and the technicals and the action, the thrills, you'll probably have a good time.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely love Sicario. It's an incredible film. High recommendation for that. And Sicario, Day of the Soldado, it's a good film. I would say, yeah, check it out. Just don't expect it's going to be the first one again.
Yeah, do not expect the first one.
It's definitely not.
All right, well, thanks so much, guys, for listening. I know this went a little over. We're almost at 50 minutes now, but I do appreciate you guys listening. We'll have a couple more podcasts here in order to catch up, but we will be caught up soon, and once we are, then we'll actually launch into some of our longer ones that we got coming up. We got some big projects coming, which we've discussed before, so stay tuned for those. Anyway, thanks again for watching or listening or whatever you're doing, and we'll see you guys soon.
Yep, bye.